Good morning, everybody. Good morning. What a beautiful room. My name is Sarah Moriarty, and I'm Executive Director of Charleston Literary Festival. It is such an honor to host this event here this morning, and welcome to all of you. I'd like to, first of all, I want to ask you a question. Do you have a mobile phone? If you do, please turn it off. Right now. Great. Now that the... Done. Everybody, welcome to this Charleston Literary Festival session with the inimitable Nikki Giovanni. Before I jump into more formal introductions, I'd like to just say that what we do at Charleston Literary Festival is possible thanks to the incredible sponsors that we have. So I would like to draw attention to the sponsors of today's session. We have TD Bank, Sam Easley and Jason Owen, and Steve Rhodes, who's right there in the second row. Thank you so much for trusting us and for supporting the incredible work that we do at Charleston Literary Festival. I'd also like to say that this session today is produced in collaboration with the International African American Museum, and we're honored today to have Dr. Tanya Matthews, CEO of the International African American Museum, here to facilitate this conversation. Dr. Tanya Matthews is a multi-hyphenate. She does it all. She's a thought leader in institutionalized equity and inclusion frameworks, social entrepreneurship, and the intersectionality of formal and informal education. She is also a poet. And her background as a poet and an engineer has made her a highly sought-after visioning partner on boards and community building projects. And her poetry is actually available in a book outside called This is the Honey, edited by Kwame Alexander. So, Dr. Matthews, we're just absolutely delighted to have you here today to facilitate this conversation. Now, yes, absolutely. Nikki Giovanni is joining us today. Nikki Giovanni is an acclaimed American poet, writer, commentator, and activist, celebrated for her powerful and influential voice in African American literature. Born on June 7th, 1943, in Knoxville, Tennessee, she grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, where her experiences shaped much of her poetic perspective. Giovanni emerged as a prominent figure during the civil rights and black arts movement in the 1960s, and she is known for her candid, confrontational, and passionate style, which I hope we're all going to see this afternoon. Her early collections, such as Black Feeling, Black Talk, and Black Judgment in 1968, established her reputation as a revolutionary poet. Throughout her career, Dr. Giovanni's work has explored themes of race, identity, family, and love, often infusing both sharp social critique and profound warmth. A recipient of numerous awards, including several NAACP Image Awards and a Grammy nomination, Dr. Giovanni has published a wide array of poetry collections, children's books, and essays. She's also a distinguished professor at Virginia Tech, where she has taught since 1987 and continues to inspire readers with her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Tanya Matthews and Dr. Nikki Giovanni.
So this is incredible, incredible. Welcome, Sister Giovanni. How are you?
I'm not well. I think that one of the first things I want to say is I have been diagnosed with lung cancer. And the reason that I'm not here is that I'm being treated for lung cancer. And I'm very sorry not to be in Charleston because I like Charleston so much. And if I'm breathing difficulty, it's because of the lungs. And I apologize, but you know, everybody has something. And I thought, well, I have to find a way to let Charleston know I love Charleston and to be a part of this festival because I love books, I love words, and I enjoy talking with people. So thank you for asking. And I hope I get better soon. But, you know, you can't go around whining about the fact that you have cancer because quite a few people have cancer and we all take it well, I take chemo for it now, and then you take radiation, and you keep your fingers crossed. So you're just doing your best, and I'm trying to be a big girl. You know, I don't want to be a whiner and, you know, why me or anything. Somebody had to catch you, so this is my time around. And thank you for asking, Tanya.
Thank you so much. But I mean, the good thing about this format, which you can't quite see, is that you're on a giant screen, so you are appropriately larger than life, which is the way that should go. And so, you know, our theme for this morning is ink and identity. And I have all these pages of questions here, and I am off script already. Because as we're thinking about things that shape our identity, of course, music and the soundtrack of our lives becomes one of them. And I'm sure you're going to get deluged with requests about your thoughts and memories and favorite songs of Quincy Jones. But let me be first to ask you, as we begin to reflect on that legacy, is there a particular moment when the music or the vibe or a side conversation with Quincy Jones sort of shaped your work or your life or your mood just in that moment?
Oh, well, thank you. And I thank you for sharing Quincy with me. But, you know, my favorite musician, and I mean no disrespect for Quincy, is, of course, John Lewis, because the Modern Jazz Quartet, the first album, and they were albums in those days, that I ever purchased was Pontessa by the MJQ. And I listened to it over and over and over again, as I do music, period. I do music the same way that I do books. So I read them over and over again. And I get teased about that because I have friends who read on. They'll read one book and then I read this one, and I don't. I have very few books in my library, but I read them over and over again. I read them 3 and 4 times. So I treat books the same way I treat music.
Wow.
I just keep hearing it till in fact you end up dreaming it, and then you're making, what difference would I make if I were writing that? What change would I make?
And so when you're reading these books over and you're thinking about how you would change, how do the books you're reading inspire what you're writing?
Well, I think you have to know something. And I say that when I am retired now, but when I was teaching, I said that to my students. It's important to know something. And we know that writing is imagination. I'm a poet, so we use our imagination. But imagination has to know something. Yeah. I was a history major. I'm a Fisk University graduate. I was a history major at Fisk. And I still love history. I love what we learn about it. And of course, today, where we are speaking, tomorrow is Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
And tomorrow we'll find the first Black woman president of the United States in 47. And I'm so thrilled about Vice President Harris, and I am absolutely confident that we have won this battle for the soul of America, because history has shown us that evil cannot prevail.
Right.
It will always fight. The Joker does not have a job. Batman does. So Batman has to go to his job, and then he has to go and take care of the Joker too. But we know that evil cannot prevail. And so I'm thankful that I'm going to make one more day to see her elected, because that will make me happy. I hope I make more, to be honest, but I do want to make that one day to see President Kamala Harris. She deserves it. We deserve it. And it's time that we got the leadership of Black women who are, I think, the leaders of the galaxy. I think as we are going into space, going into meeting other life forms, it's Black women who lead the way. And so I'm very, very proud to be a Black woman, and I'm very proud to be behind a black woman to follow that leadership.
Thank you so much. Hopefully some folks out there just picked up the reference to one of your other known passions, which is space and space travel. One of my favorite compilations is Quilting the Black-Eyed Pea. I run a history museum, but my degree is in biomedical engineering because I thought I was going to design stuff for the space station. So I am Nikki in reverse in terms of that. But part of what you say is that if anybody can find out what there is in darkness, it is black women because of our experiences and the journey. And you write through a lot of that as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that philosophy?
Well, it's obvious. Well, and I mean no disrespect to say it that way, but it's obvious. When we look at Middle Passage, we are looking at space. We are looking at how we traveled through space, because it took a lot of courage to get on, and it was not pleasant, a ship and come from someplace you know, through someplace you do not know, to someplace you do not know. And all that is space. And so I laugh because I grew up, I was reared by little old ladies, and I had such a weakness for them. But I know that if you get a couple of black women into space, the first thing they're going to say to any life form that they run into, no matter what the life form is "You hungry, baby?
Hungry?
Come on in." That's what black women do. We feed, and we put people in a comfortable position, and we let them know we're interested. Now, where are you from? Now, who your folks?
Who your people?
And that's that one always. Who your folks? So it's always wonderful to think about as we go forward into not even the next century, because it's not going to be that long. We are spending time in the galaxy now. Yeah. And of course, we are also spending time in the galaxy. Black women are there helping to bring in some love and some comfort and some interest. I think it's really wonderful. I think it's great. It's a great idea. I am so sorry that I have lung cancer for a couple of reasons, but one is I can never go into space. And it's not that I cannot go into space, it's that I cannot come back. Mm-hmm. I can go, but if I come back, my organs will collapse on me, and I will, of course, die. And you're going to die anyway, but I just choose not to, do it that way.
Do it that way.
Natural, we go up anyway. So that's the price I pay for having lung cancer. But it's really just fascinating. And I know we have youngsters in the audience who are saying, well, I don't know what I want to do. Well, Earth is third planet from yellow sun. And we are one of what we know to be 9 planets. But what we don't know are the rest of them. And what we don't know is who lives on the planets that we don't know. So it's fascinating. And the more you read, the more you understand history, the more you see evolution. I'm a big fan of evolution because human beings are if we don't evolve, we have a real problem. Because we can't continue to fight wars. It doesn't make sense to kill anything you don't eat. And so war is one of the dumbest things that we know. It's just incredibly stupid. And it goes way, way back. But if we just look at the modern wars, World War I and II, that's totally ridiculous to kill all of those people. And it's not like you were hungry, and it's not like McDonald's needed, a little more meat for a pound.
Right.
I'm not picking on McDonald's, though I do not eat McDonald's. But you have to think about, why am I doing this? And it's time that the foolishness stopped, and it's time that we go forward into what kind of human being do we want to be.
Right. Yeah. Now that level of being intentional about the things that we're doing and saying and the ways that we're being, remind me of some of the comments I've heard you make around having a duty. right? Believing in duty, and the duty that writers and artists had. I had the pleasure of interviewing another African-American author recently, and he talked about how there are particular communities whose experiences demand no art for art's sake. That as we're putting out our art and we're putting out our writing, that there is a duty and a responsibility to it. So can you talk a bit about how your writing melds into your sense of duty, and that becomes storytelling about our experience and your experience?
Well, I think that you have a duty and a responsibility, but it's only to the truth. And I think you have to remember that. And I would open my classes when I was teaching, and I would say to my students, the one thing I hope I am able to teach you is that you are your first reader. If you don't like it, if you don't find it interesting, if it doesn't make you laugh, it wasn't funny. If it doesn't make you cry, it wasn't sad. And you're not writing for your publisher. You're not writing for something called an audience. You're writing for yourself. And so you're going to be the first person to read it, and then you're going to be the first person to say, oh, does this make sense? Can I be proud of this? And most of us, of course, being a poet, it makes it very easy, because most poets are not recognized as worth anything for a couple of 100 years. You know, we're still reading Shakespeare, so we don't have to worry about, you know, oh, well, will they like me? Who cares? Because you'll be way gone before anybody recognizes. And so you're not going to get caught up in trying to be popular or famous. And we have right now, which I'm so glad, we have Sean is in jail for abuse. And I'm glad he's in jail. And I'm glad that and I hope he stays there. I think he's guilty. No, I don't think he's guilty. I saw him beating that woman. And it's illogical. Why would you beat somebody who only wanted to help you, who only wanted you to be a better person, who only wanted to make things so that you could take another step? Why would you beat that person? And I'm always glad to see that some retribution comes. I'm not a nice person on that level. I'm not, you know, saying, oh, we love everybody. I don't love everybody. And everybody's not worth loving. You can't waste your love. You don't have so much love. And you got to sit on the people who will appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
I think you're absolutely right when we talk about things like that. But of course, you've been in the space of justice and social justice with your writing since the very, very beginning. And I've always been fascinated around how such beautiful words can pack such a real punch, delivered in just the right way. But it is a choice, right? But it is a choice. Can you talk to me a bit about your choice to write around issues of movement and justice and revolution? Because you could have made other choices, but you didn't. So what would you say in terms of how and why that you've been writing in the space of justice and revolution for decades?
Well, first of all, it's so much easier to tell the truth as you see it, and to recognize, even as you are seeing truth, you're going to learn something else. And sometimes you will end up contradicting yourself. And this only makes sense. There's a reason that pencils have erasers. There's a reason that we have, there's a reason we have divorce. There's a reason friends break up, because everything doesn't last forever. So what you're trying to do is the best that you can do. And a part of the best that you can do is the truth as you recognize it, as you want to tell it. I was talking to Tavis Smiley fairly recently, and I know you know Tavis, and we were laughing. I said, you know, Tavis, we are still among the few people who actually like the people. I enjoy talking to the people. I enjoy listening to stories. I love the old ladies. I could sit at the table, and I'm a coffee drinker, and pour myself some coffee and listen to their stories. And there's just nothing nicer than hearing what they have to say about the life they've led. And they'll say, well, this isn't important, but it is important. The life that you've led is important. And I'm also, I like to cook, and I'm not a bad cook. And one of the things you learn is, okay, what did you do? Well, I used to cook this, and I used to add that. So not only are you hearing the story of, this is the work that I did, but this is how I fed that work. And I think that's incredible, because I know my grandmother had a pantry, and I used to clean, I lived with my grandmother, and I used to clean the pantry, and I would wax it. I would wax the floor, and I would wax it was wood. And she said, you know, nobody's ever waxed the pantry before. And I said, of course you have to wax it, because if you don't, the mice will come. And you don't want to kill the mice, because you don't eat mice. Nobody eats mice. So what you want to do is wax it so that the mice will smell it and know, these people would rather we not be there. So we'll go someplace else. It only makes sense. Then you don't have to kill something that you didn't want to hurt.
Yeah.
Who was only trying to find someplace warm or something. They're trying to live just like we. Everything is trying to live. So you're trying to find a way. As I've mentioned my cancer, but I'm not fighting my cancer. I'm trying to find a way to live with it. Yeah. And we are all trying to find a way to live with something. We may not be able to. It may win. It may take us over. But we want to live with it. We're not out trying to kill it. And I think that you have to look, and that's what I like about the old black women. We look at things differently. And I'm an old black woman. And when I say, I'm 81, so, that's an old black woman. And I think it's good. And one of the things I mentioned it the other day, one of the things I hope I do is live as long as Queen Elizabeth did. Because I think she was she lived at, 96? And now we have, and I'm so sorry she's gone, that she didn't get a chance to see Kamala Harris be president of the United States. I just think it'd be such a thrill if she had. But, you want to do that. I want to vote for her on her second term.
Okay,
so
now.
I would like to get another 8 years, so that I can see it. And you're just always looking for these wonderful things.
Yes.
And the question is, and what happens next?
Right.
What happens next happens in your heart and in your brain. So you have to learn something. That's the main thing, to learn something. And then you have to learn to believe what you have learned is for you. Know what is good, in other words, for you. And that's why we have books.
Yeah. And speaking of that, and I hear you sort of resonate. We have lots of students. I see y'all. And student groups with us today. And so one of the things you talked about is you write about the truth you see, the truth that is around you. What advice would you have for young and aspiring writers who don't think that what they see around them is worthy of being in a book or worthy of being on a poem? What advice would you have as you look around your own world and try to write about it?
My advice is that something's wrong with you if you don't see the wonder and the beauty of what you see. I'm serious. That there's so much wonderful. Just listening. Kwame Alexander, who was one of my students and who is a dear friend, and I love him so much, just wrote a book on silence. Because most people are not used to silence. And just sitting, I live in the country now, so just sitting in the country when it's warm, sitting out on the deck and listening to the birds, and I can't tell you what bird, because I'm not good at that, but the birds are coming home. And so you can hear all the birds are coming home. The crickets are coming in, just listening to what other people have to say. And of course, I have a dog. You haven't heard her yet. And I'm glad, because she's moody and she runs the house. But her name is Cleopatra. But Cleopatra speaks English, because when I tell her to shut up or sit down or go away or whatever mood I'm in, she will listen to me. When she barks, I don't necessarily know what she's saying to me. So she speaks English, but I don't speak dog. So I have a responsibility.
Yeah.
I have a responsibility to learn what is she saying and what is she trying to tell me.
Yeah.
And this is, we live with living things. We live with the wind. We live with the flowers. It's so wonderful to just sit there and know that there's something else that's alive, that's talking to us. It's a wonderful thing.
And I think one of the things, because you have been contributing, of course, and writing for so long, that a lot of your work is almost like preservation, right? When you're telling a story that happened, I don't know, 20, 40, 50 years ago, it's what historians do, right? You did say you were a history major, translating it a little bit differently. But so what are your thoughts around how storytelling and art is also part of preserving the history of a community? Much like we built a museum to hold stories, but people expect us to hold stories. What about the art and the artists? How do they work to preserve a community's stories?
I think that we all have something inside of us. Some of it we can deal with, some of it we can't. Life can be difficult. And I think you have to learn the difference between what you can handle and what you can't. And those things that are too sad, or those things that are just bothering you, just eating at you, you have to let them go. Because in 20 years, talking about 20 years, in 20 years you'll write a novel or you'll paint a picture, and there it'll be, and you'll understand, oh, I remember that happened when I was 10 or 12. But you put it aside so that it didn't stop you from enjoying your life now. Am I making?
Yeah.
You can't handle everything. You're not, speaking of Batman, Superman, you're not.
Right.
You're just a human being. And some things make you so sad, so you have to let them go. And you say, okay, I will tuck this away until I am old enough to understand what has happened and put it in position that I can use it. But I cannot use it now. And so, since I can't, I'm going to make a decision. You can, and you can decide, I want to be happy, or I'm going to let this bother me. Be happy.
Yeah.
You have to choose life, and you have to choose the kind of life you want.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important too. You deserve your life. It's yours. You have a duty to yourself. And if you fulfill that duty to yourself, you are fulfilling the duty to your community and to the world in which we live.
Thank you. Thank you. I think one of the things, even as you say that, you take some things, you hold on, and you wait. I think sometimes we forget that our favorite artists grow, right? So if you, to your point, if you are writing exactly like you were writing 15 years ago, then you have not grown. And I've noticed that in your work, because of course you probably always did, but in some of your latest books, the most beautiful love poems, the most beautiful and simple love poems, that they still have that Nikki flair, which is just twist at the end, and you didn't know what you were getting into. One of the things I saw is you defined crying as a skill. Right, you define crying as a skill set, and I've got a wonderfully diverse audience here, but here as a Black woman, I am now asking you to talk to me about crying as a skill set and why you put it in that category.
Well, mostly because if you go back historically, let's go back into slavery, which is sad. Well, nobody had time to cry because you had work to do. And it's something that I didn't think about until relatively recently, to tell you the truth. I wake up in the morning, I'm 81, and this is probably 10 years ago that I became aware of it. Every morning when I wake up, I plan dinner. And I wasn't aware of doing that. This is what I'm going to do for dinner. And something came up with my great-grandmother, whose name was Cornelia. And Cornelia, we called her Mama Dear, always planned dinner when she woke up. And my grandmother, who was Louvenia, always planned dinner. And then I realized, oh, that is something that was handled down. But I also know that crying was not. That nobody could cry. You were enslaved. You wanted a hot meal for your family when they came in from the fields. So you started your day with dinner so that you could put your stew on or whatever you were doing, so that you were able to then fix a breakfast that they could go out and work for somebody else for no fee or anything. But when they came home, there was a warm meal that you had done. And it's really funny when you start to think about what you do that you never thought, where did that come from? And I still do that. I wake up in the morning. The other morning I made a beef shank, and I woke up thinking, oh, I'm gonna fix a beef shank. And you know, I'm 81 years old. Why would I'm not enslaved, but I'm carrying that along.
Yeah.
And I'm only sorry, and I must say this, I'm only sorry, I have a son, and I'm not against that. It's just that I'm sorry that I didn't have a daughter, because daughters are really where we pass these down. And it's so wonderful that you're talking to your daughter while you're making the biscuits or while you're cutting the vegetables up or something. It's always such a wonderful thing to have a daughter to share this with, because she will pass it along.
Well, I will just put in a plug. I am, of course, a daughter, but I'm also a granddaughter, and that's how I learned how to make the shortbread. So you can skip over the son. You can talk to your granddaughter. But it reminds me, when you say that, you wake up in the morning, or for whatever else you're doing, if you start with what's important, everything else will fit in. And I think that works very similarly for writing and for thinking. As you look over the things that you are drawn to write about or to write for again and again and again, what have you noticed about what you keep returning to write on, to write about?
I'm probably considered by many other writers a lazy writer, because I only write about things that interest me. I have very little desire to please people, and I think that's it. I mentioned it earlier. I know I'm my first writer. I know I'm my first reader, and I know it's important that I be proud of it. That for me, of course, because I loved her so much. I love her so much. I want my grandmother to be proud. I want to always write something that grandmother will say, well, yeah, you nailed that one. And that's meaningful to me, that she be proud of me. Now, she and I don't curse, or she doesn't curse, I do. and so she kind of had to listen to that and say, okay, well, Nikki's modern, and if you got a modern granddaughter, that's what she's going to say. But it was important. It is important to me that I write something that I'm proud of. That when she reads it, she is. And I have a new book coming out, which is funny because it's called The New Book. And my editor said, well, you know what? I had realized, I thought Make Me Rain was the last book. I'm 80 years old, I'm lazy. And so I thought, well, that'll be that. And I realized I had done just some poems that people ask you about, you do, don't know. And pretty soon I said, oh, I've got a book here. And so her name is Rachel. And I said, Rachel, I think I've got a book. You want to look at it? She said, sure. What are you calling it? I said, I'm going to call it The New Book, because it's a new me. First of all, for all of the other books, if we go back, I was really more active and I was well. And I'm not, again, whining, but the new book is a book of an 80-year-old woman who has had to face different challenges, and it has had to find a way to face them in the same way that my grandmother or great-grandmother would have faced it. And you ask about crying. Well, one of the things that we don't do is we don't cry. And so when I go back a couple of books, I realized, no, everybody needs a good cry. That was one thing that they were wrong about. You need to allow yourself to cry. And then if you're going to cry, you've made water. And if you've made water, where would the earth be without water? And actually, we should not be earth, because we're more water than, we should be some kind of hydro. You know, it's more water here than land. And so I thought, okay. And I thought, as I said, I thought I was finished. And then I had this book that actually is coming from a whole different place, because it's the new book, and it's a new me. And usually people think of themselves as a new me. They think of themselves as being young. You know, like, I'm not against young people, by the way. Everybody has to be young. But the new me is the older me. And I'm really interested in where I go from here.
Absolutely. Well, we are very excited to read the new book, and whatever poem you start writing tomorrow after the election. But, you know, I was looking through some of your poems and picking up themes that also reminded me of the museum. And you had a short piece, and it was called "But Some of Us Stayed." You know, and I think it was, you know, a lot of times we do a lot of, in a good way, celebrating, mythologizing those who went off to brand new adventures. Their imagination took them there. And so those are the stories that we write, but we don't always talk about the strength of those who stayed to preserve, to keep. So can you talk a little bit about the strength of those who stayed, particularly from the perspective of a community that is known for its great migration?
Right. You know, Those Who Stayed was written for the 13th Amendment, for the 100th anniversary of the 13th Amendment, because that's when we celebrate the so-called freedom of slaves. But, you know, we still always have to remember that the slaves always knew they were free. Wow. So 13th Amendment, no, think about it. The amendments in the Civil War, that was to show white people that we were free, because we always knew that we were free. It was a question of telling those people, now leave them alone. And they built, or if I may, we built communities. Just a few of us, and really a few dollars, and we were sharecroppers. We were not making any money, and yet the first thing we built was a church. And I think that that's just incredibly wonderful. That's the right thing. We built a church, and we built it with our own hands, and we got that done. And then we would come to everything, not just Sunday, but we would come together as a community to talk, to learn to read, to everything that we did in that church. And that church evolved into a school. And we all put our nickels and dimes and quarters, whatever we could, into letting that grow. And from there, we built a business. We started off with, you know, a wagon that we sold our vegetables or our meat or whatever. And then we soon had stores and stuff. So we built our own communities. And had we been left alone, things would have been very, very different. But I wrote that because people say, oh, and I'm not, again, don't misunderstand. I'm incredibly proud of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Boxcar Jones and all. The people who ran, I think, are wonderful. But the people who stayed were strong, and they had a faith that said, what did Jesus say to Mary Magdalene? I will be there, call me. I may not come when you call, but I'll always be there. Mm-hmm. And black women particularly have always believed, I'm going to call on Jesus and I'm going to wait on the Lord. Mm-hmm. Tell me, why can't I wait on the Lord? And I think it's just a wonderful strength that they've passed along. Mm-hmm. I really do.
Yeah, well, we have definitely got to get you down here to Charleston, because you are sounding like all of the elders and the aunties that are down here in this space, right to where your people from, and are you hungry? And so we've got just a couple more questions from me, and then we're going to open it out to the audience and talking through. And I was watching, of course, some snippets of the still pertinent and extraordinary conversation that you had with James Baldwin. And part of some of the things we're doing here at the Literary Festival is having works in honor of the centennial there. And part of what was shared in that conversation was around hope for the next generation, right? You know, different levels, sort of different levels of hope and in that space. And one of the things that I picked up reminded me of one of my philosophies, which is I can't win all the battles, but I want to make sure that the battles those are fighting after me are different from the ones that I fought, right? Can I at least sort of take ownership for my battle from your perspective? And you've got quite a perspective. Where do you think we are in terms of preparing the next generation for whatever battles are to fight, and perhaps wrapping up one or two of the battles that we have been working on so that we don't necessarily pass them forward? What are your thoughts? Hopes for the coming generation of writers and revolutionaries, however they take up arms?
Well, I think that the most important thing is that we have to recognize we are earthlings. So we need to all change how we identify ourselves. And I've spoken, of course, of Black women, and of course there are various people living in various places. And this is a bad sentence, that call themselves various things. But the reality is we are all living on planet Earth. So I think from pre-kindergarten on, we need to start teaching our youngsters, you are an earthling. So the enslaved taught us because their children were snatched from them and sold, as we know. And the last thing that child heard, though it wasn't a child, it was an infant, and probably could not even remember. But the last thing it probably heard from its mother was, if anybody asks you who you are, tell them you're a child of God. And that's what they're going to hear. And it's time that we finally said to these infants, if anybody asks you who you are, tell them you're a planetary, you're an earthling. That's where you live. So that we can stop this foolishness about I'm Black, I'm white, I'm Jewish, I'm Christian. All of that is foolish because it leads to all of these stupid wars and things. It's time that's way over.
Yeah.
It really is. And of course, it's such a thrill right now. I mean, you picked such a day to ask such a question because I'm just waiting to watch Kamala Harris become president of the United States. And that was unheard of.
Yeah.
Nobody would have thought
that. Mm-hmm.
that this could even be possible. Absolutely. And there she is. And I'm so proud of Kamala that she has decided she will do her duty. Mm-hmm. And that is to put forth. She has put her, I don't know her. I've never met her as far as I know. But she has put her happiness, her own I don't know if sponsor, I don't know what the word is, but she has put her personal life aside to serve the people. And I think that that's incredible. Yeah. And I think that we are all very lucky to have her. I have a shirt, and I had packed it, by the way. Someone, and I'm sorry, my mind is not good, I'm old, sent me a really beautiful brown sweatshirt, and it has Jimmy Baldwin's face on it. I really, really love it. And I packed it, I was bringing it to Charleston. I got to Maryland and couldn't get any further. And I said to Jenny, well, I have to go home. I can't go any further. You know how you finally recognize,
yes,
I've done all that I can do. But I love that sweatshirt because I enjoyed, it was so kind of Jimmy Baldwin to talk to me, because he was 20 years
yeah,
older than I. And of course he was James Baldwin and I'm not. And so he didn't have to spend his time on a young writer. And I just thought, that's what you do. That, again, we're talking duty. That's what you do. And I've spent time when I'm asked and capable. I spend time talking to young writers because it's what we do. And it gives us great joy to see a younger generation. And the one word, and I said that a lot to my students, the one word that I think you have to know, that you always have to remember, is enough. Because there has to be enough. And so many people don't know what enough is. And so they keep more and more and more. And it drives them crazy. It drives everybody else around them crazy. They become power crazy. I mean, you look at these people. Look at Elon Musk. You know, what do you need with $1 billion? No, I'm serious, you know. I can see why anybody want $1 million, because $1 million lets you do a lot of fun. You get a new car every couple of years. Your dog gets your shots. You know, you can understand. But after a while, there is enough.
There is enough.
And you have to understand when you have enough so that you can enjoy the people who love you and who you love.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what's important. Because too much will lead you to having a lot of hanger-ons, and you'll be sorry.
Thank you so much. Enough. Such nuggets. Enough. When you cry, you make water. I've got my pen up here. I'm writing all of these things down. And so what we're going to do is we are going to open up the floor for some questions, and for my type A personalities that have loud, booming voices and theatrical training, I still need you to use the microphone. Okay? For one, so that Sister Giovanni can hear the question, because of course she is here on Zoom, but also this is your 15 minutes of fame. And so we want to make sure that people all over the world can hear your question. So with that, who is going to be the first, the bold, the brave? Oh, okay. We're right here in the front.
Has there ever been a particular piece that you struggled to write? Maybe you couldn't figure out exactly how you wanted to put it on the page, or maybe it was just a really rough idea for you to work through. And how did you work through it?
So the question was, has there ever been a piece that you struggled to write, that it was hard to get on paper, or maybe it was just a little too rough, and you were just trying to figure out how to work through it, and then how did you work through it?
Well, I hate to sound like this, but you see, you always have to remember who you're writing for. And I'll say it again, your first writer is you. So if you're struggling to get it on and it's not working, either you don't know something, you're lying to yourself, you leave something. No, these things happen. You don't want to, there's something that happened that you don't want to say, but you're trying to get around it. And you know, forget that. If you have something you want to say it. Because it doesn't become any clearer. It absolutely you know what it is. And if you don't want to say it, you're not ready to say it. So go say something else until you are ready, because what you have to say will be smooth.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you.
As a minority writer and poet, how did you initially find and cultivate your unique voice, especially in a media landscape that wasn't always inclusive? What advice would you give to young journalists today who are striving to do the same?
So to paraphrase, as a minority writer stepping into a non-inclusive writing space, how did you make sure to cultivate and protect your own voice in a space that didn't look like you? And what advice would you offer to young writers who find themselves in the same position? She's smiling because she's about to say the same thing.
You're not going to like this answer at all. But first of all of my space looks like me. So I don't have to worry about that. I mean, I'm not a part of the modern age. And so I don't do Facebook or what is that thing, TikTok, or I don't know how to email. And if I didn't have Jenny, I couldn't even be doing this, because somebody had to come over and turn the, whatever this thing is, this is a computer, turn it on and stuff. You all worry too much about other people. And you're irresponsible. You're a young man, so I'm going to say that because it's true. You're irresponsible with your own sex habits.
Oh.
And then when you are, and then when something happens, all of a sudden, you don't want responsibility for it. And what you need to do is live your life with yourself. And you are not going to be, just look at it this way. I will not be rich if I'm a writer, and I will not be famous. None of that matters. What matters is what you wanted to do with your life. If you do it honestly, it will begin to work for you. If you don't, it won't. And this is something you have to deal with. But what you're worried about right now is, how can I have all of these people that I don't know and probably don't like and are probably stupid anyway? How can I get them to like me? And they're not going to like you because you're stupid anyway. So what you want to do, I'm serious, what you want to do is, if you want to be a writer, write. Richard Wright did, and everybody told him, oh, nobody wants to read about, a Mississippian. Well, yeah, somebody did, because his book is still in print, 100 years now? James Baldwin did. Somebody said, nobody cares what you think. Well, Jimmy thought he cared. And so he wrote it, and this is his 100th anniversary. You can't think about other people like that. If you want to be a writer, you're going to be lonely. You're not going to have that many friends. And most of the people you know are going to be dumb. So get rid of the dumb people. Get used to that. No, isn't that true? Tell me. No, it's true. And find a couple of people. That's all you're going to have, is a couple of people who like you and who are on your side. And then the rest of the people get rid of. I don't care if you have the same mother, the same father, or have the same dog. I don't care. Get rid of anybody that is standing in your way. Anybody that doesn't support you, that doesn't want you to do well. I don't care who they are.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
You know it's true, though.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. Lovely to see you. You look so wonderful. I just wanted to ask, I've noticed with poets that I study, a lot of poets go from the poetry to children's book. There's like a pipeline. And I'm interested in what drew you to writing for children, and as a poet, if you think that that's just, I don't know, natural to eventually go, I want to write for young people. Thank you.
So she's as she's noticed a trend where a lot of poets will ultimately also write children's books into that space. And so she's wondering if you think that is a natural flow for poetry and poets to go into the children's book writing space. And what are your thoughts there?
Oh yeah. Well, see, the first stories you hear are children's stories. You know, well, actually, you're hearing stories before you're born, because your mother is rubbing her tummy and she's saying, "Oh, my baby's going to do this, that." You know.
Just give Zoom a second. Maybe. But listen, it might come back, but I want y'all to know. There we go. Okay, so, Sis Giovanni, you're going to have to say that again because I was saying that.
I think that I know we hear stories before we're born because our mothers are telling us stories about what we're going to be and how wonderful life is and how glad they are that we're coming. I also personally like young people's stories. I like fairy tales, I like folk tales, and I look at them, they've lasted. Things have lasted for hundreds of years. And then you try to say, well, why? Why does Little Red Riding Hood last for 100 years? Oh, more than 100 years, Little Red Riding Hood. So we have to say, okay, well, why was she going through the forest? Well, it can only be that yellow fever, if you recall, had killed almost a third of Europe. And so her mother wanted her to go to her grandmother. Why do we go to our grandmother? Because when everything else goes wrong, our grandmothers are the people who save us, who make us safe. And I really have always hated the fact that they try to make the big bad wolf is going to be the one that's going to eat grandmother because Little Red Riding Hood is stupid. I don't believe any of that. I think that's just a basic, I don't, it's white supremacy. And they need to get over that. Like I hate, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is teaching people how to be bullied. It does. It teaches you, show that reindeer. If he's going to be different, we're going to get him. What kind of foolishness is that? And where were the other reindeer? Where was someone? She said, oh, Rudolph, I like your nose. Come on and play with us. Or where was Mrs. Claus? Or so, you get sick of people. I wouldn't sing that song for all the tea in China, nor if I had a son. We don't do Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer because it just teaches you to be mean. It teaches you that it's all right. Until they need you, they will abuse you. And you need to keep that in mind. You don't want to be bothered with these people because they are using you. And that's what you have to keep in mind.
Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question. Hi.
My name's Serenity, and I'm 15, and I've been writing poems. I wrote 33 so far, and I have one good question. What was the first poem you remember you wrote for the first time?
Wow. Okay. So the question is...
I remember the poem.
Your very first
poem? The first poem I wrote? This poem got Rosa, of course I remember. And it's about my childhood.
Nikki Rosa. Childhood
remembrances are always a drag if you're black. And I used a part of the Renaissance all the way to not letting somebody else judge me. The ending poem on that, the ending line on that is, and all the while, I was quite happy. I didn't let somebody else decide what my life would be and how I would feel about it. Sure, of course I remember.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
So we, of course, want to thank you, and of course for shouting out Nikki Rosa, a legendary poem, reminding folks that we are still there and happy, and in a moment of clarity and reveal, one of the most exciting days in my life that I will always remember is the day I learned that I would be included in one of the anthologies that was edited actually by Nikki Giovanni, which is a poem that I did. I think I hit my head on the ceiling. that I jumped so high. And so as we talk with you and you agree to talk with us and these students, we are just so excited and honored that you cared enough to bring in Jenny and everyone and set up the room so that you could be with us in this way. And it's Charleston. The door is always open. Ladies and gentlemen, Nikki Giovanni.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully you can see the standing ovation. Yay!
Thank you very much. Thank you. When I'm well, I hope to come to Charleston. I like Charleston. I've been there many times before, and I hope when I'm back on my feet that I get invited back to the museum. I look forward to it.
Wow. That was a lot to take in. Can we get one more round of applause? I just feel like, thank you so much, Dr. Giovanni, for being with us this afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Matthews, for your always igniting and electrifying questioning and just being the pillar that you are for us here in these conversations. I should probably introduce myself. Hi. I'm Asia May. I'm Charleston's current sitting poet laureate. And I'm so excited that all of you decided to come out here on a Monday to listen to poetry and remember the importance of poetry and conversation. I just ask that you reflect on that as you leave here today, to remember that poetry is everywhere, that poets are everywhere, and they are doing the work in all of the different spaces. To remember while you're at Lit Fest to embrace the conversation, not to shy away from it. And to remember that all the books are on sale in the lobby from our gracious partners, Bucks and Books, who we love oh so much. And to also leave you with this quote from June Jordan, that poetry is political because it requires you to tell the truth.
Ooh.
So you remember that when you hear these poems, that they aren't just beautiful pieces of work. Yes, they are, but they are somebody's truth. And it is up to us to bear witness to that truth.
Right.
You guys have a good rest of your day.